So this evening, we are joined by Henry Fraser. As anyone that watches 101st stuff will know Henry fairly well, so I won't give him a massive intro. And much more exclusively, we're joined by Mike Gervais. So I'm not going to go through all Mike's accolades because that'll take up the entire recording. But for want of a few other things, psychologist, Seattle Seahawks, co-founder of Compete to Create, world-renowned author, speaker, and host of the Finding Mastery podcast. So firstly, Mike, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate you giving up your time. So this conversation really, obviously second time you've been on here, it really came about because I read your book, Mike, Compete to Create, you did with Coach Carroll. And as I was reading it, there are so many points where I immediately went straight to Henry's story in terms of when you think about mindset and kind of controlling what you control, being present, resilience, and so much particularly to Henry's story. So this made real sense to bring you two together. So before we dive into that, just for people watching, I thought maybe you just give a quick kind of 5-minute overview, if you like, of you and your story.
Cool. First of all, thank you for including me in your mission and what you're doing. Honored to be here with you, and excited to see where the conversation goes, where we take it. Quick background: by trade and training, I am a sport and performance psychologist, and I have been fortunate enough to work across multiple disciplines with literally Hall of Famers, world-class, world-leading MVPs, both in sport and business, if you will, in multiple disciplines. And so I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, both from a research and a science perspective. And that's what I studied, this psychology of excellence. And then to be in the amphitheater with some of the most courageous, highly skilled humans across, like I said, multiple domains. There's something that doesn't necessarily work in the laboratory, but the laboratories inform best practices on how people can train their mind and how they can organize their inner life to pursue their very best. And sometimes their very best is world leading, and sometimes it's world class, and sometimes it is just rewarding. And so across that swath, I think that what I've come to learn is that there's only 3 things as humans we can train. We can train our craft, we can train our body, and we can train our mind. And what's been obvious to me is that most people don't know how to formally train their mind, but it is a process that there's good evidence, there's good science, and there's a process that we can walk through to train one's mind to be able to live in the present moment more often. And for me, that's my life purpose, to help people live in the present more often. And the reason that's so important to me is because that's where high performance is expressed, but more importantly, it's where wisdom is revealed. It is where all things that are true and beautiful and good are experienced. And so if we don't have the faculty, the capacity, the capability to live in the present moment, we miss the keyhole to all the good things in life. And so I would say right now, more than ever, with the increase in anxiety that is taking place across the planet, that right now there's a calling for psychology to actually do its job, to help people understand how to condition their inner life so that they can flourish in their external world. And that is the essence of how I'm spending most of my time. And I've been fortunate enough to work with the best in the world. And I want to share those best practices with as many people as I possibly can. And I'll stop talking after this one last note. The 2 ways that I'm trying to get after that is the Finding Mastery podcast. Thank you for mentioning it. And then the business of the online business that Coach Carroll and I have set up to take our best practices and insights over the course of 8 weeks and to pull back the curtain and show you exactly how you can train your mind to live your best.
And really the crossovers start there, because with 101st, a very similar concept in terms of taking these amazing real life experiences from people outside of a normal context, if you like, and bringing them and helping people apply their own context. So with you, I mean, you've got a hatful of amazing real life experiences. But I just wanted to talk around, so being present and these kind of things, and in your book, and you talk a lot around mindfulness, and these are things that are becoming more and more commonplace in terms of people talking about them. How do you actually do it?
Yeah, I mean, let's get right into it. Is that, yes, the zeitgeist conversation is about mindfulness, and you fall on kind of one of three narratives around mindfulness. You say, oh God, are we really going to talk about frickin' meditation? Like, you guys and your doe-eyed, tree hugging hippie kind of approach to life. Like, what are you doing? Harden up, suck it up, just be about it, and stop talking to me about sitting on a frickin' pillow and chanting. Okay, so that's one narrative. And I say, oh, okay, I recognize you, because that was me 25 years ago. That was me. And I thought it was a bit ridiculous, and it was for people that were a bit out of tune and didn't really understand the pressures that come with demanding environments. And they had this luxury to kind of be a wanderlust and just kind of float through life in this way. That was me. And then there's another narrative, which is like, okay, I hear it. I see that so many of the great sportsmen and artists and entrepreneurs are actually practicing this, but I don't quite get it. And I kind of get it, I think, but man, I can't figure out how to work it in my schedule. And then there's that third narrative, which is like, guys, I'm past this. Like, I've been practicing 20 years too. Like, what are you talking about? Everybody should be doing this. So I want to enter the conversation and put some handles on it and make it concrete so that, we can actually know exactly what it is and how to practice it. And I'll fast forward through the fact that it's a 2,600 year tradition, 2,600 year tradition. And I'll fast forward all of the research that will support why this is materially impactful in the quality of life. And we can double click on that in a minute. So how do you do it? There's two basic types. One is single point mindfulness, which is you practice with all of your essence, with all of your might, focusing on one thing. And when your mind wanders from that one thing, you become aware that you have wandered away from the commitment you made to yourself. And then you practice refocusing back to the one thing. So what is the one thing? To be super concrete, it's following your inhale, following your exhale. It could be following or just locking in on a dot on the wall, or it could be like a kung fu image, which is, watching a flickering candle, or it could be listening to a sound. You pick the one thing. It could be counting. It doesn't matter. It's the one thing. And what you'll come to quickly realize is that your mind is rather undisciplined. And you can say to yourself, okay, right, I'm going to do this for 8 minutes. I'm going to do this for 20 minutes. I'm going to do this for 2 minutes. Second 22, you're off. Second 2, you're off into this other thing, which is like, am I doing it right? Is this how I'm supposed to be doing it? Am I getting anything from this? Oh my God, did I just become doe-eyed and hippy dippy? And so there's this inner narrative and there's this chatter that pulls us from a full commitment to the one thing. And it is the practice of awareness. It is the practice of refocusing your mind. And it is the practice of wisdom. Because what ends up taking place is that with great awareness, we spend more time in the present moment because we're learning how to refocus back to the present moment. And when we spend more time in the present moment, we get these brilliant moments of insight like, oh, that's how this works. Oh, that's how I work. Oh, that's how Will works. That's how Henry works. Oh, that's how people work. Oh, that's how this works. And those are called insights. And when you cobble together a bunch of insights, you get to the other side of it, which is like, oh, I understand now. And we call that wisdom. And so when you can make those insights simple, you get to that place of wisdom. And I would say, after knowing Henry, there's great wisdom that you possess, because you wouldn't go that far. And so, yeah, so I love that. Good brother banter. And so
I think he's certainly matured. I wouldn't go so far as saying wisdom.
Hey, he's done more work than you have. How about that?
You talk to me,
Huh? He's done more work than I have too.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, so on that then, actually, that's a good point to bring you in, H. So when Mike talks around awareness and being present and focusing on one particular thing, now, obviously, almost through what's happened to you, I wouldn't say you necessarily were practicing mindfulness in the way that Mike was talking about in terms of focusing on your breathing, but in terms of having that one thing, you talk a lot around the little big things. And you talk a lot around when you being in hospital, it was focus on one thing. The only thing I'm focusing on is my breathing exercises with the little machine you used to have, or the only thing I'm focusing on is making sure I can get in this wheelchair. And it progressed. So in a sense, it wasn't technically mindfulness, but in terms of that practice of focusing, being present, being aware, you've almost been doing that without knowing.
Yeah, and that's why obviously speaking to Mike and hearing Mike talk to them, kind of understanding like get the science and the theory behind what's happening, and I guess why what I was doing would work so well for me in those stages and through those moments. And I guess something that is just kind of subconsciously just stayed with me in the things I do, still in the exercise I do, I guess, with the arts and things, because obviously how I do the art, I'm having to really focus on that moment, on that brush stroke, on being precise using my mouth. So I guess being in that moment of real focus and awareness is, yeah, I guess his mindfulness in a way I guess I hadn't realized before.
And I would say, obviously joking about the wisdom, but I would say you have become a lot more insightful in terms of life, your perspective of it. You clog my Twitter feed daily with your quotes and stuff. So you're definitely becoming more vocal with your insights. But Mike, so when Henry talks about that in terms of, the focusing on more physical elements rather than kind of the breathing, would you still consider that a form of mindfulness, or is that kind of building towards it?
I would say when you first introduced how you thought he was practicing, I would have kind of paused and said, well, that actually sounds like a single focus goal,
Okay.
To get off the ventilator. And it's a full commitment towards a goal, which is awesome because we know the power of setting our minds towards something and then putting our actions to that, vision.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how extraordinary things do take place, right? Is you got to back it up. You got to walk the walk, talk the walk, walk the talk. You got to do all that. But then as Henry kept talking, it was like, well, when I am singularly focused with each breath, or singularly focused on each stroke of the brush, yes. So there is sitting meditation where you're focusing on maybe just watching your thoughts, or focusing all of your essence on the inhale, then the exhale. But there's also walking meditation. There's eating meditation. There is prayer is a form of meditation. So there's lots of ways to think about meditation. And anytime you're completely absorbed in a task and you're allowing yourself to unfold to the next moment without judgment, there is a meditative quality to it.
It's quite an interesting distinction, because how you described kind of people's reactions to mindfulness is the same with meditation. They imagine you sitting cross-legged and
same thing
doing this. Yeah,
same thing. Yeah.
What you're saying there is, meditation takes many forms, and actually more people are probably meditating without realizing they're actually doing it.
And then I would say that if we pull in the science for just a minute, it's outrageous that I could go on, and maybe if you want to talk about it, we can, but it's outrageous. And if people knew the value, the real deep value of this practice, they would actually create time for it rather than it be almost haphazardly accidental, slipped into convenience. Because you know what? You guys are both sportsmen. You know that you're not going to become physically fit and strong and nimble and all of that by casually hitting the gym. So if you want to be mentally fit and you want to be nimble and adjust and pivot and be resilient and graceful and strong, then we got to train it. And mindfulness / meditation, you can interchange those words if you want. It is one of many practices. gratitude training, which I know Henry is a big proponent of, gratitude training can be a meditative practice, because the way that Henry does it, as we've talked about before the mic's turned on, is that he's completely consumed with the thing he's grateful for. And so he has the intellectual thought and then the feeling component. And it's not to check the list. I'm grateful that I have sun on my face. It's actually connected to some sort of joy or happiness, or, you know, some other emotional component. So when you do it that way and you embody it, then that can be also a form of meditation as well. But the point that I want to make, carve out time. If you're really serious about high quality living, carve out time. And I mean, I'll just give you one bit of research here, that those that practice mindfulness meditation have an increased frequency in flow state. Flow state being the most optimal state a human can be in. Those that practice mindfulness sleep better. They have better mood stability. They have better parenting skills. They have higher performance in high stress environments. I mean, it's ridiculous. Minimal effective dose for this part of the training is 8 minutes a day. Optimal is 20.
Okay. So that's an amazing thing. It's not a lot of time, is it?
Not a lot of time. If my first teacher was here, like my mentor in this space would say, Mike, why are you still talking about counting minutes? Like, you're still missing it. And I say to the wise man, I say, yeah, because I mean, I'm fitting 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag every day. I got to count my minutes, man. Like, I'm doing everything I can to, you know, keep it rolling. So, but that's what science would suggest. That's not a lot of time, please.
And would you say that kind of for people to do that every day or every other day or
every day?
Every single day. Cool.
Yeah, not that different than the way that you talk about gratitude training. Is that there's 3 phases. There's the skill, meditation, the mindfulness skill. Then it turns into a state of being, and that state of being is more aware, more present. And then over time, it turns into a trait, which is like this enduring thing, you know, there's like a deep embodiment that, no, this is just kind of, I live gratefully, to use your language now. So you practice the skill to get the state more often. And when you keep practicing for a long time, it becomes an enduring trait. And with all habits, it is best to have great consistency. Here's the problem. Oh, sorry, Will. Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, here's the problem, is that when you practice it, it's not like you get done with that 8 minutes and you're like, oh, I feel great. You know, like when you go to the gym and you're done and you're like, yeah, I'm glad I went. That's good. I feel something. And, you know, I don't know, maybe you're looking for whatever kind of gains you're looking for, but it's different with meditation. It just takes a little bit more time.
Nice.
And again, what really strikes me, obviously knowing your story, Henry, very well, and you know, hearing you talk, Mike, and having read Compete to Create, is again, when you talk about the gratefulness training, or the term you gave it, again, Henry, without even knowing that was an actual thing, and what's interesting with your story is this stuff, not that it took an extreme thing to happen for you to do it, you never know, you might have done it anyway later on in life, but because of the extreme thing that happened, it almost pushed you down the path quicker. So when you hear Mike talking, does that just take you back to early on when your mind just started to move naturally towards, well, actually, I should just be grateful for what I can do and not worry about what I can't?
Yeah, definitely. Because we spoke about gratitude and things I do is, again, it's not something that I'm consciously always doing now. Obviously, at certain times I'm doing it, but it was a big part of helping me focus and, I guess, have that awareness more each day when I woke up, and put me in that right mindset of going to each day. So that obviously early on in the mornings, and I'd be lying in bed and thinking about those things and feeling the joy and the happiness that they made me feel. So then when I woke up, when I got out of bed and started my routine in the morning, I was already at that kind of level of kind of being happy, and at a level that had I not done other things in the morning may have made me more frustrated or angry and kind of set me off and made the rest of my day bad. But I was able to deal with them. Like Mike said, I was in kind of I approached situations where I was having to make decisions with carers and things in the morning, but I was able to do it much clearer and concisely and honestly with them.
Yeah, and what's amazing is even though you didn't know it was an actual thing you could practice, it was still a conscious decision. So Mike, you're talking around obviously gratitude training being a conscious, almost decision thing you do, and Henry, you were making that conscious decision without actually knowing necessarily the benefits it was going to give you down the line.
No, and I guess it was something, like I said, because of what happened, the situation I was in, I guess I was forced to think very differently and act very differently, and that I had done than I'd ever done before. And I guess understanding the difference, kind of the things that I was never grateful for before the accident, that I then realized these are things that I should be grateful for, and I can be grateful and make me happy now. And because I had that huge contrast, I was able to kind of, I guess, throw myself straight into it. But like you said, had I not had the accident, then, who knows whether I would have found that or not. But then hearing Mike speak, obviously it then makes so much sense for people to be doing anyways. It doesn't, kind of what I've been through and things I've learned, it shouldn't, like, not everyone has to go through a kind of huge catastrophic or huge change in their life to experience this. We can all make these changes in our day-to-day lives here and now.
Yeah, and this is the beautiful thing of getting you two together, because it just reinforces that exact point of actually, it doesn't take something incredibly awful, incredibly good to happen to have to change the way you think. It's just, as you say, Mike, little bits, and then you build them up.
I feel like I am forever working with people. Actually, how do I want to get into this? There's two things I want to say. And so I'm arguing with myself as I'm saying them, but people come to me because they're in some sort of pain, and they are the best in the world, right? And they've got some sort of pain that they're in. It's not working out right. They have all of the, big house, big watch, big whatever, but they are struggling internally. So they're coming with some pain, and they know that there's a way through it, and they're willing to work to get there. So people come because of pain. And I think what is magical about this conversation is that what I'm trying to say in a more public place is that why wait for pain? Why wait for that? And then I say, well, actually, you don't really have to wait. You just have to look within yourself. And I know you're suffering. I know that. Even if you haven't had an accident to the likes that you've had, Henry, like, people are suffering. So if we get honest and get quiet, we'll touch that suffering. But you know what's easier? I don't know, flip through Instagram, eat a donut, rip a beer, hit the gym. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much easier. And so, and all of that is noise. It's just it's a distraction from actually feeling what's true, which is like there's an innerness that is not satisfied and whole, and there's a suffering that we all have. So what you do is you're able to open people up in a humble way, by saying, hey, you can look at my body here for a minute, and it's going to make you look at what you have. I hope you're grateful. And I'm going to show you how I have become happy and joyful and at peace in life, and how I have used my life history to be far better and to actually give to others. And so you have this incredible opportunity that you are capturing, where it's compelling. And then that's the one thing I want to say. The other thing I wanted to add is that, the way that we can train our minds, it's not hard. It really isn't. And it doesn't take an incredible amount of time, but it takes a want. They have to want to do it. And the people that I spend time with, again, I'll just wrap this up, they freaking are the best in the world, and they want it. And so why not the rest of us? Spend 20 minutes a day working on your inner life, training your mind. Shit will be better, period.
And it's a really interesting point, because, and from the world of sport, even if it's a superficial reason, the reason they work at this stuff is because it's to try and get that little extra bit out of them for the high performance. And for people that are in similar situations to yourself, they're doing it because they almost have to in order to start the recovery. And well, I suppose Joe blogs on the street, there's not that pressure or that forceful thing or something pushing them to actually, it has to be, actually, I just want to do it for me, which invariably for a lot of people is a harder jump to make, because for sportsmen, women, and yourself, age, you got to do it. It's almost. But Mike, I just want to jump on, and there was a quote. Obviously, I've listened to a couple of podcasts, and a quote I wrote down, and it kind of segues nicely from what you've just spoken about. It was inner world and outer life. I wrote down in the pod you've done fairly recently, and you're talking there about kind of your inner self, and so I was wondering if you could expand on what you mean by inner world and outer self. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool that you picked up on that. I really like that concept that there's this this porous nature between my inner life and my external world. And I think that's true for all of us, is that, the inner experience is uniquely yours. And the external things that you do with it are materially affected by your inner experience. And so who I am, what my purpose is, what is my core guiding first principles in life, do I have the skills to be calm in any environment, the skill to be confident in that if something doesn't go well, that I can try to figure it out to my best ability. Like, these are skills that we can practice sets and reps. So there's an inner experience to life and there's an external experience. And the most dynamic people on the planet, the external does not dictate the internal. So the most dynamic, the true powerful people, their internal experience of who they are and the skills that they have come to develop dictates or influences the external. That's the order of business. And I'll make it super concrete. Like, I see it all the time. People come into a big moment in life, like the lights are on, it's a Super Bowl thing. I don't think there's such thing as a big moment. The only moment we get is this moment. And if we miss this moment, we've kind of blown the only fraction, thin slice of life that we have. Okay. So this is the moment to capture. And so, but let's use the way that some people think about big moments, in life, and the lights are on, it's the finals, whatever it is. And I've been fortunate enough to be part of those in lots of different sports, and they freak out. For what reason? Because more people are watching. I'll be damned. I lived this way too long that I let other people's opinions of me, potential opinions of me, constrict my artistic abilities to express, to go for it, to let it rip, to be on edge, to figure it out, to be ugly in it. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let the external world dictate my internal experience. And when that happens, I know that I got to triple down on my internal work. And I see it hand in hand again, is that when there's a quote unquote big moment, that people become small. And that is so freaking painful. I had to feel enough of that pain to say, not for me. I got to figure out a better way. And so, so that's it. And then let me just add this one note, because I want to go back to
right away. You keep going.
No. Because I think Henry's onto something really important, and which is like, there's some roommates in this world of living well. And those roommates are like gratitude and optimism and acceptance and becoming aware. And awareness is where this thing starts to get to the others. And mindfulness and meditation is about the practice of awareness, but they're roommates. And now you got to pick, like, are these your roommates in the penthouse, or are you down in the basement, kind of in the back alley, kind of funky about it? Whatever, it doesn't matter, but you got to pick. But those are roommates now. And I'll say that those roommates, when you pull them together, they are at tier 0 of mental toughness. Okay, so optimism is at the center of mental toughness. Now you say, oh, I'm tough and I'm not optimistic. I'm a cynic and I'm a pessimist and whatever. I haven't met you on the world stage then. Cynic maybe because it's fun, but if you truly are a world leader, I'm telling you, you're not a pessimist. So pessimism is the fundamental belief that shit ain't gonna work out. Optimism is the fundamental belief that it is gonna work out. I gotta do my part. And so my part is to stay in it when it's hard. That is why we practice optimism and don't just kind of say, oh, optimism is cool. No, you practice it. You practice the way you speak to yourself about hard things. And so it is a learned behavior We are not born optimistic or pessimistic. It is a learned behavior, which means we can train it and get better at it. And so there's loads of ways we can train it. But if you're not training optimism, one or two things are taking place for you. One, if you are naturally optimistic, your parents gave you a massive gift. They did something, they believe the future is going to work out. And so they shared those little, hallway conversations and pillow talk and dinner table conversations. They shared like, shit works out, just stick with it, you're good. But most people, you get granular here for a minute. We've got this massive engine that's only weighs 3 pounds. It's our brain. It sits in our skull. And that massive engine is beautiful. It's powerful. We don't really know how it works. It's if I oversimplify it, the most dynamic supercomputer in the world. And that's the hardware. And we've got a software that's running it. And the software is your mind. Okay. Holy shit. Most people have not trained or upgraded their software. And you know what's running the show? H knows this. You know what's running the show? The hardware, the brain. And you know what the brain's dictum is? The number one responsibility of the brain is to say, hey, find the danger so we can survive another day. How about it? So if the brain wins, it's scanning the world for all the dangers, all the things that could go wrong. It's going to create a pessimistic safety, play it safe, play it small, give yourself an out, drink too much, drug too much, eat too much, stay up too late so you have an excuse. And that excuse is the reason that you never had to get to the truth, that you're not properly prepared to meet the intimate moment right now when it's hard. And the intimate moment is sometimes love, it's sometimes deep happiness, it's sometimes fear, and it's sometimes hurt. And so if you can't meet those moments, you're just kind of bullshitting yourself a little bit. So I say that with love because I lived it, dude.
Yeah.
That was I feel like I'm on version 5 of myself or something like that. And like my first 3 versions were, I was bullshitting myself.
But it's fascinating because anyone listening will be able to relate everything you just said at some point where their initial reaction has been one of most people probably be able to see a moment where their initial reaction was one of pessimism and how that ended up, and where their initial reaction was one of optimism and then how that ended up. And in real tangible images of kind of, well, I went down this route and didn't go too well, and I went down that route. But again, I keep repeating myself, as you're talking, and I can say this about H because I'm his older brother, when you talk about pessimism and optimism, that's literally Henry pre-accident and then Henry post-accident. In the sense that when you talk about your inner life dictating your external world as opposed to the external world, and you won't mind me saying this, H, but young Henry was very much an external world dictating your inner life. It was the excuse of every Sunday night going to bed, calling down to mum and dad he couldn't sleep because he didn't want to go to school the next day because he hadn't done his homework, but claiming that he was ill. Those little moments, and I can't tell you, Mike, the difference in the two. Still lovely bloke, obviously loved him the whole time, but the difference. And so again, H, you're listening to Mike there, as we said before, you almost had your hand dealt in many ways to go, but you still chose them. It would have been super easy to have chosen the other route and just wallowed and self-pity and all the rest of it, but you chose to go the other way. So what's really interesting is why. What made you choose to go that way, or was it just an instinctive reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, hearing Mike speak and what you were saying, I mean, it makes kind of, I mean, that was fully me for 17 years of my life. But yeah, I don't know. I guess through the situation, I was given time to be able to look back and think about my mindset in moments and what I was doing. And obviously the things I was doing, the gratitude, the kind of my focus on what I could do, my awareness in those moments in hospital, I was able to kind of have a clearer mind and understand my moments in hospital, which then allowed me to look back at moments before my accident when I went into things always pessimistically, always thinking about the worst outcome, like Mike said, my mind was always preparing the danger, the bad thing that would happen. And I missed out on a lot of things because of that. And then that kind of drove me even more to be kind of optimistic about situations. And things still make me nervous, and I still kind of have thoughts every now and then, but I've certain kind of mechanisms, my routines, my kind of forcefulness in my own head to stick with it and go in situations. And once I get there, like for example, going to give talks, I'm very optimistic about it because I'm going in thinking about what might happen at the end of it, about the rush I get at the end of when I finish a talk, about those happy feelings I feel. And yeah, it's definitely, hearing Mike talk about it, it makes so much sense.
And can I add something, Will? Which is there's a cultural sensitivity to this as well. Like, your friends will listen to me talk and say, "Oh yeah, that's a Yankee. He's over there. Like everything's good in California. What do you imagine? Like there's a cultural thing here too, and that I'm aware of. And I love cynical humor. I think it's fucking funny, and I love that kind of crusty humor. We're gonna, bust balls, and like I really enjoy that. And I'm also mindful that if we're not careful, that cynical humor can turn into a trait, which is, and then there's this group think, which is like, it's not gonna work out anyway. So I don't know. I used to love sarcasm a lot too, until I realized it actually comes from the root sakar, which means to rip flesh off of another. And sarcasm humor is at the expense of the other always. And I thought, oh, that's my defense. I was good at it, but it was a mechanism to not be seen, because I'm ripping flesh off everyone else. And it became dangerous, to get into a kind of a battle, a humor battle with me, because I'm just ripping flesh everywhere. But it was really because I was afraid to be seen. And so it created this mechanism where I was never really close, but I was around people. And so I say it just a long way of saying there's a cultural sensitivity, but the science is showing up that optimism and mental toughness and gratitude and meditation are great roommates in this pursuit of personal or maybe collective excellence.
And I guess, sorry, to go back to the sarcasm thing, that I guess that's why it's very much more, I guess, prevalent amongst men, is that sarcastic humor. Is because guys, obviously, we're not always as, and historically are not kind of open to talking about these things normally, or kind of have these honest conversations. I guess that's why in groups of guys it becomes kind of the main form of humor for many men.
Let's stay right at the surface as long as we possibly can, because and then as soon as if we touch a nerve, what'd you say about my mom? Oh, those are fighting words. Like what, we go from like 0 to something, and like, and you can see it in somebody. If there's, 5 folks ripping on each other, you can see as soon as someone gets triggered, And so that's the thing about emotions, is that they're physiological experiences. So you can feel it. You feel an emotion physiologically, like your stomach changes, your temperature changes, your digestive tract, your hands tighten. There's a way that you feel an emotion. And what I love about that is that others can see it too. We just don't quite know that they can see it, but they can see it. They full on see it.
And it's actually, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that because you'd never think of emotions being physiological.
Oh yeah,
you always think of it being in your head. Oh, it's just I just get really upset, I get really angry. But you're right, when you think of moments, well, think about nerves. If I take it back to kind of what I knew in terms of playing sport, nerves, my physical reaction to being nervous, I used to cry. To burst out crying, like, it's ridiculous. And I can help it. It took years to actually almost, I suppose that realise and train myself to actually be able to deal with those moments before you kind of run out onto a pitch in front of however many people. But what's really striking in this whole conversation, and go to a word that Mike, I know you like as a term, is in order to be able to do with this stuff, you need to have clarity. You need some clarity.
Yeah, from clarity to conviction. That's right.
H, for you, that the clarity was almost in being able to almost have this mirror held up to you and be able to look back at almost the former self and see the things you missed out and see these ways and then change. But Mike, going to be able, it's almost that initial reflection piece to actually be able to recognize that actually my head's super busy all the time, or that I don't deal with a certain situation well, or that I'm letting external things impact my life that I shouldn't. You've got to have real clarity just to be able to recognize them in the first place, even before you start doing something about it.
Yeah, Henry, you had a forcing function to get to clarity. And I will say that my experience has been, and I want to say this with all humility, and I want to include myself in this statement, is that nobody's getting through this world without trauma. Call it big trauma or little trauma, big T or little t. But nobody's getting through this world without it. And my hope is that people will say, okay, well then how can I better prepare for it? You know, I really want to live an extraordinary life, and I haven't upgraded my software formally. And, you know, like that's the hope, is to, Henry, you're saying to people, hey, become more aware. Hey, accept more the things that you cannot control, and then triple down on the things that you can, and get better at a plan for improvement. And one of those things that you can get better at is gratitude. And that will lead you straight to some increasing in joy and happiness. And you might end up really enjoying life better. And so it's a powerful mirror that you're holding up to people.
Yeah.
And the clarity that you have to say, this is kind of it. And I would just add that you actually are very intentional, and you're very thoughtful with the words that you choose. And that only comes from an introspective, honest process to get to clarity.
I thought it was going to be a big thing after that.
Yeah. No, wow.
But it is, but it is amazing, because, you know, it's kind of the gooseberry in this, listening to it and hearing it. It is, I'd say this is why I was so keen to get it on, because this was the exact kind of visceral reaction I was having when I was reading your book, Mike, because it's just incredible how much this stuff HU have done, are doing, you know, are going to do, without even knowing that it was a thing that you could actually train, and you know, you just did it, and it's really, and as I'll flip what I said about being an older brother now. As an older brother, it was, you know, it made me really proud. Like really, when you're reading it and going, shit, Henry's doing all this. Like, this is no wonder he's been able to deal with everything the way he's dealt with it, because he's done, you know, literally ticking off these things as you're reading through it. And then going on to the. Sorry.
Hey, Will, I want to pull on that thread and kind of share something I think is material, which is the science of sport and performance psychology is built on a formal investigation of the extraordinaries.
Okay.
So that's you, Henry. So it's the study of you and people like you that are like, we go, how are they doing that? And we go, oh, over time, you know, 60 years of the study of the research goes, oh, gratitude is part of it. You didn't know all that study, but you are one of the features in the discipline, you know, spiritually, if you will. You're one of the features in the discipline that bright minds have investigated. How does Henry do it? And you and other extraordinaries are like, oh yeah, okay, optimism, awareness, clarity, acceptance, controllable, right? Gratitude. Oh, have a plan, small bite-sized digestible goals. Yours were 5-minute goals, if you will. And express yourself authentically. Oh, that's what they do. They have freaking courage. How do they do that? Well, they have the ability to risk being vulnerable to get to the truth of something. Oh, okay. So you are the subject, you know, that sits across many people, across many disciplines.
Okay. So just to start to round off, just conscious time. So going on these bits we've kind of spoken about, and again, Mike, to quote you again, every day is an opportunity to create a living masterpiece. So getting to this, you know, to your pod and finding mastery and getting to that point. Now again, Henry, first, when you hear that as a quote, what do you take from it? Because in my head, I can apply it to what you've done and what you do. But what do you take when you hear that quote?
Well, for me, it's obviously going back to what Mike said earlier, is about kind of being in the moment, and kind of, again, for me, it's taking each day as it comes. It's about, I don't know, finding that. I don't know. I guess personally for me, it's about finding things that make me happy each day, and being happy allows me to do so many more other things, because again, my mind isn't cluttered. I have that clarity that I know what I want to do. I know what I need to do to be able to achieve it. And taking each day, it's understanding that each day and taking each day at a time for me. And yeah, and I guess at that point, and those things I've done over the past 11 and a bit years, quite early on, and I talk about every day as a good day. It's about creating that good day each day. It's about being happy and enjoying those moments. So yeah, I mean, I love that quote, because it really reduces it down. Everything I've done is about reducing things down to days, to moments, to minutes, to whatever. It's all about been reducing, and yeah, so I'm a big fan.
I love that, because that's my personal philosophy for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I don't know another way to say it other than like it's got all the good stuff in that statement for me. And for me, a living masterpiece is really about an integration and an alignment, and getting right to the edges of my capacity daily, and staying true to the principles of the man I want to be, and getting right to the edges of that and being true to the man I want to be. And then having that alignment between my inner and my external, and the globalness of, it's more of a spiritual kind of thing. Like I got to be tapped into the nature, the true nature of what is. And, I say that and it sounds almost hippy dippy. I want to explain that, is that oftentimes we say, oh, we got to go get into nature. Well, you are nature. I mean, I am nature. Like it's not the lake and the mountain and the surf, yes, that's nature too, but we are nature. So why don't we start with getting into nature right here? And so that's a big deal for me. So living masterpiece is getting right to the edge and being the man that I say that I'm going to be.
And I suppose what's really interesting is the people listening, it essentially, as you use your words, H, you reduce it all down.
Yeah.
It comes down to you. There's no, it's, and this sounds super obvious to say it, but this is not something that someone else can do for you. This is not something you can either going and talking to someone about it, perhaps a good start, but at the end of the day, they can't do it for you. You still got to take that ownership and make the conscious decision to go, right, this is something I'm actually I'm gonna train, I'm gonna spend time, as you said, and actually do this stuff.
And then I would add to that, which is like, yes. And then I want to say in 1980 and 1990 and early 2000, it was all about you being the best you. And then I want to add to it, because I think, Henry, you're right there with me on this, but wave me off if I'm wrong, is the reason to do that is to help others do the same. So it's like that creates a rising tide where we are all better. And so it's not put your life vest on so you can get out of the plane first and go grab the gold and squirrel it away for you and a couple friends. It's to put your vest on so you can be there to put others' vest on. And then we can get out of the frickin', downed plane together. And in life, what does that mean is that, hey, we need each other. Nobody can do this fucking thing alone. It's too hard. I don't care if you take that from a business frame and you're trying to solve something from a big business, or a sporting frame, or a family frame, or a government frame, or an art frame. Yes, you are alone when you're creating your canvas, or you and your canvas and your brush, Henry. But you know what? You're not doing it life alone. No individual contributor does it alone. And so we need each other to get into that extraordinary place of human potential. And so I add that, like that's, for me, it's a big deal. It's not just, I don't want to help people be more powerful and be more of a selfish narcissistic, grab the gold, see you later. I'm I'm fatigued by that. I'll tell you that.
And it's such a nice point to start to wrap up on, because bringing it back to 101st, that is the kind of sole purpose to help create change and to help other people. It's entirely that thing of actually how can we help other people, and that's why, drawing from your story, H, hearing you, Mike, talk on this recording, it's exactly what we're trying to do, is draw from amazing people that have amazing experiences. Okay, well, how can we apply them into your life, into your organisation, your team, whatever it might be. So just to wrap up, I have written down here, Mike, actually, I was going to ask you the question you ask people at the end of your pod, Finding Mastery, find it on all podcast suppliers. What does mastery mean to you?
Oh, thank you.
I'm sure you've probably been asked that a million times, to be fair. Everyone's probably gone down this route when they've interviewed you. I don't know, but I'll be a sheep and I'll join them.
Yeah, good. No. I think it's a hard question to answer. And so I've obviously put a lot of thought into it. And before I answer it, I want to say thank you for including me in your mission. Thank you for, including me in your passion and purpose. I'm honored to be on this conversation with you. And so mastery is, it's going to sound trite, but the goal is to get on the path of mastery. So the path is the goal. All right. So what is the path made of? Well, the path is made of learning. And how do we learn best? When we get right to the edges of our abilities and we experience the true nature of that. And then we come back to find high ground, because that shit is scary. We come back and find high ground to say, okay, what are my capabilities that I want to get better at? And so for me, I think about mastery as the path of living in a way of true alignment. And that alignment is between my thoughts, my words, and my actions, and to do that consistently across conditions. So for me, mastery is getting down into the nuances. You're so skilled at something, mastery of self or mastery of other, but you're so skilled that you're now almost playing a different game in life. So if I'm a master tennis player, I'm playing a different game than you're playing. And if you and I were to play rugby, you're playing a different game. I'm trying to frickin' figure out, like, how do I hold the ball?
Yeah, I don't know, Mike. I made a professional career out being a very average rugby player. So you're probably closer to me than you think.
No. Yeah, so, right. And then there's mastery of self, which is those that are committed to the path, they're down in the nuances of what makes something themselves work. And then there's a freedom when you get to that truth. And so, the true path of mastery does lead to art and authentic expression of what is true. And that takes craft, and that takes an investment in self. So long way of saying, thank you, brother, for asking that complicated question. Yeah.
Well, H, I'll give you a slightly simpler one to finish us off. So hearing Mike say all that, talking to everyone watching, what would be the next steps you'd ask people to do, or you think people should do, in order to start to reach that goal of getting on the path to mastery?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like we've spoken about, it's about having that honest conversation with yourself about, I guess, trying to understand yourself and your own needs, your own way of dealing with things. It's very important. It's a very hard thing to say, like with physical training, it's one size fits all. It doesn't always work. You got to find your own way of dealing with it, which takes time, which takes, again, patience with yourself. And then, I think once you get on that side of things, then you can start having those open, honest conversations with yourself and start talking about things that trouble you, or why you feel certain feelings in situations, and really understand yourself much better, which will help make your days much clearer, make your goals much more achievable, which can really help you focus. And I guess it comes back to what we're talking about at the start with awareness. The kind of more aware you are, the more you can do to help yourself and others.
Awesome. Brilliant. I think that's probably a great note to wrap up on. So, Mike, thank you so much for being on this. Jenny really appreciates it. And I didn't say at the start, but I love your cap. H, as always.
It's the only game I've been to, so I wanted to.
Well, you see, I thought it was a bit of sarcasm, but then you said you don't do sarcasm anymore. I thought, he must have to support England.
No, yeah, no, it's a great game.
Yeah.
So I just did it for fun for us.
Nice.